Thank you, Roy. Our next speaker is Andrew Sherman, and he's a partner of this firm, Jones Day, which is hosting this event. Thank you. Mr. Sherman is a recognized international authority on the legal and strategic issues affecting small and growing companies. He is an adjunct professor at the MBA program at the University of Maryland and Georgetown University for over 23 years. He is the author of 23 books, quite envious, on legal and strategic aspects of business growth and capital formation. His 23rd book, Harvesting Intangible Assets, Uncover Hidden Revenue in Your Company's Intellectual Property, is due out this fall. Andrew, it's all yours. Since you're the tech man, I'll leave you.
Yes, thank you. Appreciate everybody grabbing coffee before my presentation. I'm feeling a little bit of a signal being sent. I promise you not to give you the boring lawyer speech. And Rohit, when we were planning the program, we promised we would deliver candor to the audience. So really, no need to sugarcoat it. I mean, if you have views on the federal government procurement system or anything, go ahead. Share them. No, that was great. I'm so grateful to my panel, and I know we're going to have some great discussion in a moment. And I'm going to try and keep my comments as brief as we can so we can get interactive. You've all been very patient in... yeah, 2 slides, right. You probably, if you've heard me speak before, I always have more slides than I do have time to speak. Let me just set the stage in a couple of areas. Number one, we have heard some incredible content being shared about the role of innovation in the economy, the role that small and medium-sized enterprises can play, both on a global and domestic level, what changes in policy and the law can be made to help facilitate that process. And so I want to kind of turn to the practical side. I want to turn to what are some companies doing in the trenches, what can all of us do in this room to help facilitate that process, and anything that I don't get to today, this is in the spirit of a shameless book plug. The book has finally come out as of just a few days ago. Yesterday was its publication date, and a lot of the concepts that I'll be talking about are drawn from the book. Topics very, very near and dear to my heart. As Giuseppe said, I've been working in the areas of entrepreneurship and innovation for over 30 years, and I've got, like Rohit, some pretty defined and concrete and candid views about what's working and what's not. So let's jump into it. First, I want to just explain the basic premise of the book. The fundamental premise is based on the fact that we began as an agrarian society. And as an agrarian society, we evolved to an industrial society, and we went from there, as was mentioned, to an information-based society. But the fundamental premise of the book is that we've never stopped being an agrarian society. But today's crop is the crop of knowledge, the crop of know-how, the crop of channels and relationships and show-how, and all of the formal categories of intellectual property that we've had. And that we need to teach both SME leaders, government leaders, policymakers, heads of NGOs and trade associations, and particularly the heads of small and medium enterprises. We need to teach them principles of farming, principles of agrarian principles that will allow them to cultivate. I mean, to cultivate a field is no different than building a culture in a company, to irrigate that field properly. And the most important point I want to convey to you this morning is the need to pick the harvest at the appropriate time. I will make the point to you today that we have trillions of dollars of agrarian fruit in the form of knowledge and research sitting, waiting to be harvested. And if that harvest doesn't get picked on time, all of us know what happens. It rots. It's of no commercial value. If we don't begin to approach innovation in this manner, back to our agrarian roots, I think that we are doing the world and the global economy a disservice, and that's what I want to focus on today. So, back in 2004, before we were all governed so heartily by our devices, Bill Gates said, never before in history has innovation offered the promise of so much to to so many in such a short period of time. I believe very strongly in that quote. I believe that we are 8 years later, or nearly 8 years later, and there's still much work to do. I believe that everyone on our panel believes that there is still much work to do. But the principle remains true. Innovation can be the economic engine that we've been talking about. Innovation will be the economic engine that we're talking about. And the thing I like so much about the Gates quote is the to so many. The to so many. Innovation is inclusive, not exclusive. Innovation changes lives. Look at developing countries that never got wired telecom, skipped right to wireless. Look at the growth of some of the emerging economies. And you know, we always talk about the BRIC countries. With all due respect, I'm a little tired of hearing about it. I want to, you know, Rohit's going to go candid, I'm going candid. A little tired of hearing about it. I want to start talking about some countries like Ethiopia, growing at 12% GDP rates, Vietnam, markets in South America. What Colombia has accomplished in a short period of time is incredible. And this is where innovation is really driving. It's not just innovation in terms of breakthrough technologies. It's been innovation in the form of a huge shift in attitude. So a few more thoughts to stimulate your minds as we get into this topic. I was giving a speech at the Kelley School of Business on Tuesday at Indiana, and I started with this quote, and then I asked the audience, why did I start with this quote? What is it about the Michelangelo quote that brings out the entire point of my presentation and the entire point of much of what you heard from the rest of the panel? So this would be the interactive piece of the program. And I'll just sit here quietly until someone tells me, why did I choose this quote? Particularly a few of you in the room who have started chipping away at the book. What is it about this quote that's so insightful? Anybody? There's prizes. There's lunch with Rohit in LA at his treat. In fact, I think I'm going to go ahead and offer that one. Anyone who gets this right gets lunch with Rohit at his treat in LA, in the no-traffic city of LA. The 405 is just a fantasy that I've sat in it for 2 and 3 hours at a time near the airport. Anybody? Why did I choose this quote? Apparently lunch with Rohit is all that non-attractive. I thought there'd be more takers. Why?
It suggests harvesting.
It suggests harvesting, and it suggests a value that what? Here's the 2 words I want everybody to say together. Already exists. Already exists. You know, we're at a time where capital is constrained. We're at a time where resources are constrained. We're at a time where our policymakers and government leaders are all trying to figure out, how do we stimulate growth? And my answer to them, quite simply, to the guys across the street, it already exists. These trillions of dollars, by the way, that all of us in this room have contributed, has already been spent. A few years ago, Inc. magazine did an article talking about the processes that I go through with companies. The writer, Leigh Buchanan, excellent journalist, said, spending time with Andrew is like finding coins under the sofa cushion. It's like, well, okay, I'm supposing that's a compliment. And the point she was making is we just need to get up off our rear ends and lift up the sofa cushion. Because otherwise those coins will sit there indefinitely. And the other thing to keep in mind is that we then have to have the skill sets, which my panelists have so importantly emphasized, that to distinguish between old Cheerios and real coins of value. Because some entrepreneurs and some inventors view old Cheerios as things of value, and they're not. I wouldn't suggest feeding your kids right in the trash can. Second quote I love too. Doesn't every generation think this, right? Every generation thinks that everything that's good that's been invented has already been invented. But this was the guy heading up our patent office upon his resignation and closing of the office in 1899. And a few good things have been invented since then, at least in my view. This is another one of my favorites. We don't like their sound, and this whole guitar music thing is way out of style. Yeah, Decca made a good decision, right? In rejecting, you know, he talked about digitalization, right? In rejecting the Beatles. Bill got it right on the first quote. I'm not so sure he had it right on this one. Any of us that are still old enough in this room to have used a 640K microprocessor driven computer. You remember you